Okay, sir, we are live.
We are
The
live.
chairman's ready.
Good morning. Good morning. Good
I'm
morning,
going to mute my
everybody.
mic. I'll keep my camera on.
Good morning, everyone. I think we're ready to call
And
this.
we are broadcasting currently.
We're live. Once again, good morning, Ms. Davis. If you would please call the roll.
Turn your mic on.
Yes. Thank you.
Chairman Vasquez, you can convene the meeting whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Good morning. I was looking for Ms.
Your
Davis.
mic is muted. Let's have you unmute.
Brenda, is Ms. Davis there?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, here we
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Good morning. I think we're ready to call this meeting to order.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you could please call the
Mr.
roll.
Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Where's the sound?
Ms. Davis, can you hear me?
I don't know what you're
I
talking.
can hear you, sir, on Teams, but I'm not hearing you.
I can hear Ms. Davis, but I don't think she can hear me.
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you so much.
Oh, great, great. I was able to hear you, but I guess you couldn't hear me.
I saw the captions, but I wanted to make sure that we can both hear one another. So I can hear you now. I'm glad that you can hear me. Would you like for me to call the roll?
Please, if you please call the roll.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Vasquez,
Present?
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Present?
Member Gaines,
Present.
Member Cohen,
Present.
Controller Yee,
Here.
It looks like we have a unanimous. We have everybody here, including our controller. If we could just please begin with, if I can get you to all to stand, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get started, I wanted to open up this meeting with with a moment of silence, if we could. I'd like to open the meeting in memory of the Congressman John Lewis, who passed last Friday, July 17th, at the age of 80. John Lewis was one of the big six leaders of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and he continued to fight for people's rights throughout his career in Congress that began in 1987. He has been noted as the conscience of the U.S. Congress, and his integrity, dedication, perseverance, and leadership will strongly and sorely be missed. If we could just begin with the moment of silence, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Ms. Davis, before you call the first item of business, I just wanted to remind everybody, once again, we all are sharing this one line simultaneously. So we need to be careful that we, one, respect each other's times, and please wait to be recognized so we don't overlap our conversations, to make it a little bit easier for those, the staff that has the transcription is basically can follow and record these minutes accurately. With that, Ms. Davis, if you would please announce our first order of business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first order of business is an announcement from Acting Chief of Board Proceedings, Henry Nanjo, regarding public teleconference participation. Mr. Nanjo, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good morning to the individuals who have joined the Board of Equalization for today's meeting via teleconference. Throughout the duration of today's meeting, you will primarily be in a listen-only mode. As you may know from our public agenda notice and our website, we have requested that individuals who wish to make a public comment fill out a public comment submission form found on our, quote, additional information webpage, which can be found on www.boe.ca.gov. If a public comment has been received by our board proceeding staff on a specific item, after the presentation of the item has concluded, your name will be called and the operator will provide you directions for you to identify yourself. Additionally, if you have not already filled out a public comment form, the moderator will provide instructions after presentation of each item on how to make a public comment. The operator will identify your line and unmute you so that you can make your comment. We ask that the person whose name is called gives the public comment at that time and limits their comment to 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, excuse me. Additionally, if you intend to make a public comment, we recommend dialing into the meeting on the teleconference line, as the audio broadcast on our website experiences a 1 to 3 minute delay. We ask that everyone who is not intending to make a public comment, please mute your line if possible, and if not, to minimize background noise. If there are technical difficulties when we are in the public comment portion of our meeting, we will do our best to read submitted comments into the record at the appropriate times. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Ms. Davis, back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, would you like for me to call the first item?
Please.
Our first items are the constitutional functions within K3. The Property Tax Deputy Director's report will be presented by Mr. David Young, Deputy Director of Property Tax Division. First, Mr. Young will present item K3B, the 2020-2021 private railroad tax car rate. Mr. Young, are you available? Mr. Young, if you are on the line, please make sure you unmute yourself so that you can begin your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, all. This is David Young. I am the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. Good morning, Honorable Chairman and members of the board. Before you, I have a report on the applicable tax rate for the private railroad cars. This rate is calculated pursuant to Section 11403 of the Revenue Taxation Code. For this year, the rate is 1.154%. It actually represents a very slight increase over the last year's rate. Last year's rate was 1.151. There is no action required. This rate is calculated pursuant to law, and it's just an announcement and that the rate has been calculated and will be used for this year's private railroad car assessments. Thank you. This concludes my presentation. I'll be available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions?
Mr. Vice Chair Schaefer, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Schaefer.
Mr. Young, over the decades, have the volume of private railroad cars increased or been about the same? I mean, is this becoming less fashionable or more fashionable? When did this all start? I mean, we haven't had taxation since 1879. I imagine it probably came in the last 20 years. Do you know anything about the history of our taxation of railroad cars?
Yes, I can give you a brief history and concentrate mostly on the last 5 years.
Okay.
Over the last 5 years, there has been a general increase in the number of car days. So how California assesses their railroad for this type of cars, these are basically freight cars that come in and out of our state. And overall, the car days have been in the last 5 years seen a general increase. Although this year there has been a slight decrease in the amount of railroad car traffic and presence in the state of California.
Do we know how other states treat this railroad car taxation?
In general, most states do have a property tax on private railroad cars, whether it is through their property taxes or through their a different form, either income tax or perhaps a personal property tax. But it is usually taxed, and most of them do share some method of allocation amongst the states, recognizing the fact that the cars move between states.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Young.
Of course, anytime.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Hearing none. Ms. Davis, will you please call the next item?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that you have an announcement that you'd like to make before we go to the next item.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. You know what? I just wanted to, especially for the viewing public and for the members, ask really the members, and I'm hoping everybody is in concert with me on this thing. And on the agenda, item M, due to some uncertainties with specific details and concrete information on this matter, I was hoping that we could postpone the hearing until next board meeting, which would be in August. I apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused you and the lateness for the postponement, but if we could just put this off until August, I would really appreciate it. If there's no objections, we will go ahead and put that off. We will listen to any public comments. If there's somebody, when we get to the item, we do have to listen to any public comments that have been requested. We just won't be, we won't be able to answer or get into any discussion or dialogue if we move forward with the postponement of this item. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do that. So just for the viewing public and for the record, item M will be postponed until the August meeting. Thank you, Ms. Davis, for reminding me. And would you please call the next item?
And I'm sorry, this is Acting Board Proceedings Chief Henry Nanjo. I just want to make sure the record is clear. The chairman just postponed discussion of M, public policy hearings, M1, update AAB executive order impact on COVID-19 on property tax administration working group report. We have a number of people who've indicated that they wish to make public comment on that item. If those people are listening, and if you would wish to postpone your comments as well until after that presentation, or after that item is presented in August, please feel free to send an email to board proceedings, and we will just cycle your request to speak or make public comment until the August meeting. Again, just send the email to board proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Henry. With that, if we can have Ms. Davis please call the next item.
Thank you, sir. The next item is K3C, adoption of the 2020 private railroad car roll. Hearing this item is a constitutional function of the board. Mr. Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division, will present this item with staff's recommendation. Mr. McCool, are you available to start your presentation?
I am available.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and members of the board. As stated, my name is Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. I'm here with you today to present for your consideration and adoption the recommendation for the 2020 assessment of the private railroad car roll. State statute requires the board to annually adopt the private railroad car roll on or before August 1st. I'm happy to answer any questions and ask for your adoption of the roll. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? I'm seeing some nods, no. So I think we're okay. I would like to entertain a,
I
sorry.
do have a question. This is Member Gaines.
Yes, go ahead, Member
Yes,
Gaines.
I want to make sure we're following order. Are we at, this is
K3C.
K3C, right?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
And it's the adoption of the 2020 private railroad car road, CF.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the staff recommendation for the lien date 2020 assessments of the private railroad cars.
It's been moved by our controller. I will second it. If we can get a roll call vote on this, Ms. Davis?
Member Vasquez?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, Member Gaines, question of clarification
Yes.
from Henry Nanjo. I've got to be careful due to a financial interest with regard to, I believe it's K3D, but I want to clarify that it's not also related to K3C.
Is Henry available?
Yes, I am. As I understand Member Gaines' financial interests, it is not impacting this one. It's impacting the next, potentially impacting the next item.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Does that clarify?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms.
Thank you,
Davis, you can please call the roll on this item?
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer,
Yes.
Member Gaines,
Yes.
Member Cohen,
Yes.
Controller Yi,
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. With that, Ms. Davis, if you would please call the next item.
The next item is K3D, adoption of the 2020 state assessed property roll. Hearing this item is a constitutional function of the board. Mr. Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division, will present this item with staff's recommendation. Mr. McCool, are you still on the line and available?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning again. As stated, Jack McCool, State Assessed Properties Division. I am here to present for your consideration and adoption the recommended 2020 lien date state assessed property roll. The recommendation includes the unitary values adopted at the May 2020 board meeting, plus adjustments based on prior board actions and staff recommended non-unitary values. These recommendations are allocated to the individual counties so they can generate tax bills and collect the property tax. I would like to note that Member Gaines' vote today will include non-participation in the following assessees: Pacific Corp. number 106, Sierra Pacific Power number 146, Kern River Gas Transmission Company number 188, BNSF Railway Company number 804, and Union Pacific Railway Company number 843. I am happy to answer any questions you may have and ask for your adoption of the roll. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Controller.
Thank you. So I understand what's before us are the values that this board adopted at the end of May, as well as any adjustments to the unitary value based on prior board actions. So does this mean that there are no pending appeals once we adopt this? And if so, I really appreciate the diligence of the staff in bringing this to us at this stage.
The 2020 petition deadline was July 20th. So any of the adjustments that are included in this roll are the 2019 petition findings, any audit findings from prior years.
Okay.
So our 2020 unitary petitions are not part of this.
Or not part of this. Okay, got it. Thank you. All right.
But any board decided petition matters or adjustments that would be made based on 2019 petitions
Yes.
would be part of this roll.
Would be, yeah, have been adjusted here. Got it.
Member Vasquez?
Any other questions? Mr. Gaines, yes, go ahead.
Gaines, thank you. Just clarification. from my notes, it's showing that the financial interest was for BNSF Railroad Company, not Union Pacific. And I believe Union Pacific was mentioned. Can we just get clarification on that?
So this is Chief Counsel Henry Nanjo. It's up to you, Member Gaines. If you would like to participate on Union Pacific, that's fine. We will make that adjustment on the record. Okay, because yeah, the wording I have was Pacific Corp, Sierra Pacific Power, Kern River Gas Transmission, and BNSF Railway. Okay. So we will clarify for the record that Member Gaines is not participating in those items, but he will be participating on the balance of the items, yes, including Union Pacific. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from any of the members? Hearing none and seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff's recommendation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to adopt the staff recommendations on the allocations of the unitary values adopted by the board, plus the adjustments based on prior board actions.
It's been moved. I will go ahead and second that.
And also the staff recommended non-unitary values. Sorry, the last piece.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hearing and seeing no other comments or questions, Ms. Davis, if you could please call the roll on this item.
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines noting non-participation on the items mentioned.
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Thank you. Ms. Davis, if you can please call the next item.
Our next item is G1, proposed amendments to the Property Tax Rule 202, presented by Mr. Lawrence Lynn of the Legal Department. Mr. Lynn, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and members of the board. My name is Lawrence Lynn, and I am a tax counsel with the Legal Department. I'm here to request that the board vote to initiate the rulemaking process for the proposed amendments to Rule 202, which is titled Allocation of Aircraft of Certificated Air Carriers and Scheduled Air Taxi Operators. Now, if you recall, I recently brought this rule before the board last month during the June 23rd board meeting. And at that meeting, the board authorized for publication the proposed amendments to Rule 202. Unfortunately, the version of Rule 202 that was adopted was an older version, and a newer version of the rule exists. Board staff brought this to our attention afterwards, and this time we've attached the correct version to this meeting's agenda. Thus, we request that the board reconfirm their adoption and authorize for publication the correct version of the proposed amendments to Rule 202 so as to commence the official certificate of compliance action to make emergency Rule 202 permanent. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Hearing none and seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff's recommendation on Property Tax Rule 202.
So moved.
It's been moved by our controller. I will second it. Seeing no other comments or questions, Ms. Davis, if you please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer,
Yes.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Ms. Davis, if you'd please call the next item.
Our next item is the administrative consent agenda. Item is J1, approval of the first item, is J1, approval of the board meeting minutes from May 13th, 2020, May 27th, 2020, May 29th, 2020, June 9th, 2020, and June 23rd, 2020.
Members, do I hear a motion to approve the board minutes as presented by the staff for May 13th, 2020, May 27th, 2020, May 29th, 2020, June 9th, 2020, and June 23rd, 2020?
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes,
this is
Ms.
Deputy
Dunn.
Controller Yvette Stowers. Controller Lee Yee has left, and I'm now standing in her place.
Oh, okay. Thank her for coming through. Really appreciate it. I know she's got a real busy schedule, but go ahead, Ms. Yvette.
Thank you. And I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Seeing and hearing no comments or questions. Ms. Davis, if you please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer,
Yes.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Thank you. Ms. Davis, you would please call the next item.
The next item is K, other administrative items. The Executive Director's Report has items K1A through K1D. Ms. Brenda Fleming, BOE Executive Director, will present items K1A, Organizational Update, K1B, Extension of Time to Complete Local Assessment Role, and K1C, Extension of Time for Official Acts. And Ms. Lisa Renati, BOE Chief Deputy Director, will present items K1D, Operational Priorities and Projects. Ms. Fleming, are you available?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I'm Brenda Fleming, the Executive Director. Today's report will include updates on the agency-wide strategic priorities and some of our operational priorities since last month's meeting. Each month, members, I will provide updates on the agency-wide strategic items, and then the executive management team, which includes Mr. Nanjo, Ms. Renati, Mr. Young, Mr. Durham, and Ms. Thompson, will provide updates on projects and priorities in their respective areas. This month, I'd like to highlight the following items. I'd like to give you an update on the third in the series of 4 statewide informational hearings, an update on the BOE and the state budget for fiscal year 2020-2021, including what's known at this time on the furloughs, otherwise known as the personal leave program for 2020, an update on the governor's resilience roadmap as it relates to our telework plan, and finally, members, the reports on the extensions of time for completion of the local assessment role and for official acts. If I could begin first with the first item, statewide informational hearing. As a refresher, members, in the summer, believe it or not, in the summer of 2019, you agreed to hold a series of informational hearings to get input on issues that are important to the long-term health of California's property tax system. At our August 2019 board meeting, I reported on the importance of the board's leadership role in studying emerging state and local government issues that would impact the property tax duties under our jurisdiction and the importance of engaging in public discussions with taxpayers, taxpayer advocates, local governments, policymakers, academics, etc. Those conversations that could result in policy development and problem solving. The plan, members, at the time was to hold 4 informational hearings throughout the state, 1 in each of your districts. We have completed 2 of the 4 hearings. The first one, if you recall, was in September of 2019 in San Diego in Vice Chair Schaefer's district. The second was in December of 2019 in San Jose, Santa Clara County, and Board Member Cohen's district. The third informational hearing, Modernizing California's Property Tax System, Part 3, which will be a discussion of the newly qualified split roll initiative, will be held tomorrow, members, July 23rd, in Board Member Gaines' district. I look forward to an informative discussion on this ballot measure. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, this meeting will be held via video and teleconference, but will be live streamed, as has been done for our recent board meetings. Details about the informational hearing are included in the July 22nd and July 23rd board meeting public agenda notice, and that's available on our website. The fourth and final informational hearing in this series will be held for Chairman Vasquez's district, and that'll be scheduled for later this calendar year, and as soon as we have more information, we will provide those updates. Moving on, members, to the state budget item. Just a quick update here on the state budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Senate Bill 74 is the budget bill, members, a Holly Mitchell bill, Senator Holly Mitchell, Budget Act of 2020. That bill was approved by the governor on June 29th and chaptered by the Secretary of State, Chapter 6 Statutes of 2020 the same day. This bill makes appropriations for the support of state government for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, and it declares that it is to take effect immediately as a budget bill. The Budget Act of 2020 shows no change to the BOE budget in either funding or positions. The BOE remains solid at funding of $30,790,000 and 192.6 positions, so we're good. As a result of recent labor negotiations, the state and represented employee organizations have amended several existing agreements by side letters and agreed to a new successor memorandum of understanding, and we refer to those as MOUs. These MOUs and the side letters reduce employee compensation to achieve the necessary budget savings approved in the 2020-2021 Budget Act. The plan became effective July 1, and it includes many elements. The core of this plan is the personal leave program, and we refer to that as POP. The core elements are each full-time employee will continue to work their assigned work schedule and shall receive a 9.23% reduction in pay in exchange for 16 hours of personal leave program leave credits. The POP plan includes many other elements that deal with how we're handling health care and a number of other elements, but there's slight variations, members, from bargaining unit to bargaining unit. So I won't go into that detail at this point. We all state agencies, in fact, are waiting for more information regarding how the personal leave program is going to be implemented. We don't have those details to date, but as soon as the details are available, we will provide updates, not just to you members, but to all of the impacted employees. Members, moving on to item 3, which is the Governor's Resilience Roadmap. Within the past few weeks, due to increased COVID-19 transmissions statewide and rising hospitalization numbers in many communities, the governor, as you know, is taking more actions to slow the transmission of the disease. As noted on the state's COVID-19 website, which is covid19.ca.gov, California is still in stage 2 on the roadmap, which provides guidance on how low-risk workplaces can begin to reopen. The low-risk workplaces include things like retail, manufacturing, outdoor museums, limited personal services, etc. The governor's administration continues to provide State of California executive leadership with guidance for the COVID-19 response. COVID-19 operational guidance is being updated regularly as the response evolves. Our current guidance continues to focus on the use of respiratory protection, masks and clothing coverings, sanitation guidelines, instructions on social distancing, signage for spacing designations for offices, conference rooms, elevators, etc. Members, as I've shared in prior meetings, state agencies have been asked to target at least 75% of staff on teleworking status, with each agency performing its functions under their specific continuity of government plans. As noted previously, BOE has no difficulty meeting this goal. We've been doing it successfully since March. We are now reviewing our plans to include additional levels of risk mitigation measures, and we'll have that view over a 12-month time frame. And we'll certainly keep you informed as the plan is refined. Proceeding, members, to item K1B, extension of time to complete local assessment role. This item, members, does not require board action or direction. It's for informational purposes only. Revenue and Taxation Code Section 616 requires county assessors to annually complete their local assessment roles by July 1. Section 155 provides, however, that the board or its executive director may extend by 30 days the deadline for any official act by the assessor. In the case of public calamity, the deadline may be extended by 40 days. Section 155 also requires that the executive director inform the board of any such extension at its next regular meeting. Pursuant to this provisions noted above, the memo is to inform you that the Imperial and Yolo County assessors have requested and have been granted a 40-day extension for completing their 2020 local assessment roll. As of today, a total of 29 local assessment roll extensions have been granted. Members, proceeding with item K1C, extension of time for official acts. This item does not require board action or direction, again, for informational purposes only. In accordance with Rev and Taxation Code Section 155 and the State Board of Equalization Property Rule 1051, the board or its executive director may grant extension of time for official acts required by rule or regulation. In the case of public calamity, the deadline may be extended by 40 days. Section 155 also, members, requires that the executive director inform the board of any such extension at its next regular meeting. Pursuant to the provisions noted above, this memo is to inform you that the Assessment Appeals Board of Imperial, Santa Barbara, and Santa Clara counties have requested and have been granted a 40-day extension for public calamity. Such extension is granted for all deadlines prior to January 1, 2021. Therefore, any official acts that must have been completed prior to January 1, 2021 must now be completed 40 days after the original deadline. Each 40-day extension period is to be counted from the first day after the original 2-year deadline. Understandably, we are continuing to receive requests for extensions from other assessment appeals boards, which will be approved. Those will be reported on at the next meeting in August. As of today, members, 7 extensions have been granted to the county assessment appeals boards. Members, Ms. Renati and the executive team, at your pleasure, will now provide their updates on the operational priorities, projects, and activities in their respective areas. And again, members, I always want to just pause to acknowledge our staff and to thank the entire team, both definitely our BOE team and those who support us through CDTFA for their response to this crisis and their commitment to our continuity of government responsibilities while still caring for their families. Members, if there are no questions for me, that will conclude this report, and I'll turn it over to the executive team.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I am Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today's report will provide updates on our operational priorities since last month's meeting. As a preliminary matter, it goes without saying that COVID-19 has required a significant shift in how we do business. Consequently, the work on some of our operational priorities has been temporarily interrupted. However, with this said, I am proud to say that staff has been remarkable in their ability to adjust, and we continue to make progress. The first item is the agency's strategic plan. We are resuming work on the agency's plan, which focuses on rebuilding, revitalizing, and modernizing the state's property tax system. We are currently developing an implementation plan that will outline the deliverables, timelines, and milestones to ensure we meet our strategic plan goals. I will continue to provide regular updates on our progress with our strategic plan. The next item is the office relocation project. Work on the new BOE headquarters office in Natomas is continuing without major interruption to our daily work. We anticipate the construction project will be primarily completed in December 2020, at which time the entire headquarter operations for the agency will be housed in one location. The next item on our priority list involves legislation that we've been tracking, which includes ACA 2 and AB 2330. For consistency, I've included these bills with this month's report, but as Mr. Durham will explain in his upcoming Legislative Research and Statistics Division's Chief's report, these bills did not move forward and will no longer be tracked in future reports. And the last item in my report regarding operational priorities involves the agency's recruitments. As of this month, we currently have over 71% of our current positions filled. Half of our current vacancies are either in active recruitment or in the process of preparing for recruitment. Due to COVID-19, we had to shift the means of how we conduct our merit-based competitive hiring interviews. Staff has done an extraordinary job of adjusting, and we have been very flexible to the use of technology and other means to complete this very important function. Filling our vacancies continues to be one of our top priorities, and we hope to make additional headway in the months to come. Members, this concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. And hearing no questions, I will move on. I believe the next item, Ms. Davis. What is next item?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Dick, well, is there any, let me first, before we move on real quick, is there any questions from any of the members on what we've heard so far? Seeing, hearing none. Ms. Davis, go ahead.
Could I,
thank you, Mr.
could I
Chairman.
weigh in? I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Gaines. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Mr. Gaines, go ahead.
And so I was just curious as to an update on the communications position. I think I don't know to what degree you can share with us, but I think the last that we were told was that was had been out, and I don't know if the interviewing process has started.
Yeah, Mr. Gaines, this is Brenda. Thank you for your question. That's a personal item, and if you don't mind, sir, to the confidentiality of the nature of the current status, I take it up with you offline.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Aaron, see no other comments. Ms. Davis, if you can call the next item.
The next item is K3, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report, presented by Mr. David Young, Deputy Director of Property Tax. Mr. Young will present K3A operational updates. Mr. Young, are you available?
Yes, I am, and thank you again. Once again, this is David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. Today, I will present a operational update for the Property Tax Department. There will be 4 items that I will cover. The first one has to do with the State Assessed Properties Division. As you have already noted, you've adopted the board assessed, the board role and the private railroad car role. So that represents a majority on the large function of the State Assessed Properties Division. Right now, we are shifting our work a little bit in that division. The assessment appeals for the unitary values were due July 20th, this Monday. So far, as of yesterday, I believe we have 18 assessment appeals filed. There may be additional ones that will trickle in. They only need to be postmarked by the 20th. So for now, we have 18. There may be additional ones coming in the future. So that will be what we'll be concentrating in the state assessed properties portion of the Property Tax Department. Next, I have an update on the Community Land Trust Project. As you recall, I reported on this last month also. The project is to provide guidance on how to assess and value affordable housing built on community land trust owned land. This project has been going on it's been a long-term project. The guidance has been in draft for approximately 2 years. It has gone through 2 legislative amendments to get the treatment that is desired on the valuation and assessment of this type of housing. We are close to the end. There is one issue that hopefully will be addressed in an upcoming legislative amendment. So we will wait until that is passed when there's action on that, and we will proceed with the interested parties process right after that conclusion of the legislative session this year. Hopefully, we will bring the guidance to its fruition very soon. The next item I have to report on is the certificated aircraft project. As you've noted earlier today, you readopted Property Tax Rule 202. That has to do with the allocation and the assessment of certificated aircraft. Also associated with that project is a revision of the board's handbook on the issue. That is Assessor's Handbook, Section 570, and it is the assessment of commercial aircraft. Staff is reviewing and redrafting that handbook. That handbook was published in 1972. Staff has redrafted many of the chapters. There is work still remaining to be done, and the majority of that work will be on the chapter on the actual valuation. So we are working with this aircraft subcommittee of the Assessors Association, and hope to have a draft out for review and comment. When that happens, we will issue an LTA and we'll start the interested parties process and make that draft available for review and comment to all stakeholders. And finally, I wanted to provide you an update on the split roll initiative. Staff is currently analyzing the workload, the additional workload, should that initiative pass. Right now, staff has identified many of the major either added new responsibilities or expanded responsibility the BOE will have, and the assessors also on if the initiative passes. What remains to be done is a closer look at the resources and the actual staffing it would require to implement that. In light of tomorrow's informational meeting, I will basically abbreviate my report on the split roll initiative, and I see that we are actually on the agenda for tomorrow. This concludes my Deputy Director's report on operational updates for Property Tax Department. I'm available for any questions if you may have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Davis, if you please call the next item.
The next item is K4, Legislative Research and Statistics Division's report, presented by Mr. Mark Durham, Chief of the Division. Mr. Durham, are you available to make your report?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, sir.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and all honorable members. I'm Mark Durham of the Legislative and Research Division, and I'll provide you with an update on legislation. First off, let's talk about the legislative calendar. July 27th is when the legislature reconvenes from recess. August 31st is the last day for each house to pass bills. September 30th is the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills. November 3rd is the general election, and then November 30th is when the legislature adjourns. Moving on to the bills of interest to the Board of Equalization, AB 2330, this is the Nazarian bill to transfer duties. This one failed to pass out of the House of Origin on June 19th, but it is still listed as an active bill in the Assembly Rev and Tax. That was the companion bill for ACA 2, also the Nazarian bill. This one failed to pass and qualify for the June 25th November ballot. But again, this one's still listed as an active bill, and I think those just have not been updated on the ledge info. Moving on to, any questions on those two? Okay.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Am I right in determining that their active status is on its way out? I think prior in today's meeting, they talked about it will no longer be monitored. I mean, I'm confused.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
No, great question, and yes, sir. Both of those failed. The first one, it just has not been updated yet. The first one, the Assembly Bill 2330, failed to pass out of the House on June 19th. That was the deadline, and it did not pass out. And then the Assembly Constitutional Amendment, that one failed to qualify for the November 3rd ballot. The last day to qualify was June 25th. So both of those failed. So as Ms. Renati indicated, and if the board pleases, I can take these off my update.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Good question. So moving on to Senate Bill 74, as Ms. Fleming indicated, this is the Budget Act of 2020, Chapter 6, Statutes of 2020. This one was approved by the governor on June 29th and also chaptered by the Secretary of State. And as she indicated, there's been no change in the BOE's budget. The next bill is AB 3373. This is an Assembly Rev and Tax Committee bill. This is the one we've been reporting on about the assessment appeal boards. This one was referred to the Senate Government Finance Committee on June 23rd, and it has not been scheduled for hearing, but is still considered an active bill. One we just found out this morning, and this is not on your sheet. This was is Senate Bill 364. This was it was a Stone bill, but now it's a Mitchell bill. It's been amended, and it changed from a property tax base year value factoring for senior and disabled vets. It has now been amended to change in ownership for non-residential active solar energy systems. This is set for hearing on July 27th at 10 a.m. in the Assembly Rev and Tax. And we just found out about this morning, so we're going to jump on this and have an analysis on the amended language to you by the end of this week. The next one is ACA 11, which is the Mullensburg Friedman Gray Maze. This is the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled, Families and Victims of Wildfire or Natural Disasters Act. This one was chaptered by the Secretary of State on July 1st, and this one did qualify for the ballot measure on November 3rd. It is now Proposition 19. The other statewide initiatives we have is we have the Initiative 1851. This was the initial split roll initiative that was received by the Attorney General's Office on January 22nd, 2018. This one was withdrawn on June 23rd. It was replaced by Initiative 1870, and Initiative 1870 did qualify for the November 3rd ballot. It is now Proposition 15, and this is what the meeting for tomorrow is going to be discussing. The last one I have is Initiative 1864. This is the changes to requirements for transferring property tax base. This one was withdrawn on July 1st, 2020. And with that, do you have any questions?
I have a couple of questions that none of the members do.
Mr. Chairman, you get a moment.
Okay, Mr. Durham, as we're looking at ACA 11, I mean, this one really got loaded up here at the end. And it's my understanding that there's three key property tax components to it. One of them is expanding the ability to transfer your home's base year value. The second one, reducing your ability to transfer your home or other property to your children without reassessment. And the third, authorizing CDTFA to perform various property tax functions. Is that right?
Correct. This one, yes, the areas we're looking at is the parent-child and grandparent-grandchild exclusion. This one replaces the existing exclusion with a new exclusion for a transfer of a family home, and it also adds a value test. This provides that the family home includes a family farm and requires the transferee to file a homeowner exemption claim within 1 year. And it eliminates the exclusion for any other type of property. And then you're right, the other one is the base year value transfer for over 55 disabled and disaster victims.
I guess my question is, when was the BOE requested to provide information regarding this measure?
Well, this one was kind of, this one was pushed through rather quickly over the weekend. I guess it was a couple of weeks ago. And this is where they had Senate Bill 300, which had, I think it was 4 or 5 constitutional amendments that they extended to push on to the November 3rd ballot. And ACA 11 was one of these. So really, we did our analysis on this, and there was really no time for us to have any additional input on this one.
So is it correct? Because I noticed in looking at the Senate Committee on Appropriations, their analysis dated June 20th, BOE provided limited data regarding the cost of this measure and the tax revenue generated by the measure. Is that because you really didn't know, or did we just kind of sit back on it?
No, we don't sit back on it. We just didn't know because a lot of these are difficult to assess and to really determine who's going to take this and who's not going to take it. So what we do is we just provided I think it was a per occurrence on this one. So what we do is at the time we see the bill, we give our analysis. But again, this one was updated without any additional input from us.
That's what I was afraid of. Well, maybe moving forward, maybe this is a question for our Ms. Fleming, our executive director. It might be in the best interest of the members, the board here, to put together an informational hearing on this, just to get the info out. Because as I was reading through it, I mean, this could have some real devastating impacts on families that own property.
Yes, sir. Duly noted. And that, at the pleasure of the board, we do have, as I mentioned in my report, there's one more informational hearing that can be scheduled out of the series. So if that's something that you wanted to take up for your info hearing.
Sure.
We can go on the details as to when you'd like to have that scheduled. And just to what Mr. Durham is saying, we do sometimes get more time to weigh in on some of these analysis, more time than others. And so we have been having more discussions about it internally also, and just really re-evaluating the language that's there. So it's definitely some additional, it's definitely going to be impactful, and there are some other elements that we think would be useful to talk about. I've asked staff to start to research it a little bit more and to prepare our perspective on it. So we'll certainly keep you posted. And again, I'll circle back with you to discuss the timing of the next informational hearing.
Perfect. Yeah, because I had the opportunity to speak to my assembly member after the vote took place. Now, he stood off and he wasn't there for the vote, but he was telling me that, yeah, it just, the last minute, they just started adding all these things to it, I'm assuming to get the votes. And at the end of the day, I don't think it was well thought out.
Which one is he talking about, Mark? ACA 11?
But I think it was Ms. Cohen. Did you have some comments on this?
Well, yes. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Durham, one thing I have not heard in your presentation is how will this change the law? How will ACA 11 change current law?
And actually, it's since it's on the ballot for November 3rd, it's Proposition 19. And if Dave Young is on the line, you want to give a...
Yes. Yes, good morning, all. Once again, David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. That is the big question. How is it going to change the law? The Prop 19 actually changes two pre-existing programs. There is already a parent-child and a grandparent-grandchild exclusion from change in ownership, and a base year transfer already for 55 and older disabled due to disability and for disaster relief. So those programs are already existing. This proposes to change it. Much of the language in the initiative is very broad and does not go into much detail. Much of it will probably need to be implemented by statute. So that there will need to be a robust discussion as to how exactly it will impact them, whether one repeals the other or whether they're going to be standalone parallel programs. I know, at least from my initial look at it, it will change the parent to child and grandparent to grandchild exclusion quite extensively. The portion where they do away with anything other than a primary residence will be a significant change. Right now, you can transfer property to a qualified transferee that is not your primary residence. So yeah, there will be many changes, and a lot of it will depend on, well, one, we need to take a much closer look at and to see and to identify the areas, and two, what type of implementing legislation will go into effect in order to make some of these this initiative basically implementable.
Ms. Fleming, good morning to you. This is Member Cohen. I was wondering if you could have someone explain to me current law as it exists, as it's written, what's on the books, and then highlight for me how the initiative would change the current law. What I'm hearing, it sounds like no one can tell me concretely where the distinctions are. They can tell me high-level generalizations, but I'm looking for some and a very explicit understanding as to how the law is going to be changed. I'd like to know who it's going to potentially be impacting, how it's going to be targeting people. I have a good sense as to people are lining up on it just because of a Google search. But what I don't have is a good grounding in the current law, and most importantly, how this Prop 19 is going to change current law.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. And members, if this is something that I think would be valuable to all members, so I will work with staff and put together an information sheet so there's a comparison for comparative purposes, what the existing law allows for and what for the proposition as we know it, what it's suggesting and where it might align or where it might be in conflict. I think that would be prudent, and that's consistent with what we have been having internal conversations about, what it means. And as just for note, as Mr. Young indicated, we're still going through it to try to make that determination and trying to do our interpretation of it. But we will put together a comparative analysis information sheet, and I think that'll be helpful for all members to have reference to. Just members, I just remind you, again, this is a ballot measure, so we're careful. We can provide facts, but we're cautious about taking a position on it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Member Vasquez?
Yes.
Member Gaines?
When you're done.
I don't want to interrupt Member Cohen, but when she is concluded, if I could ask a couple.
I think she's finished.
I'm done, Mr.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Gaines.
Oh, great. Thank you. I would agree with you. I think we ought to have an informational hearing on this because it really jumped through the hoops very quickly in the legislature, and I don't think we were fully aware of how rapidly it moved, and that often happens toward the end of session. It's I wish that process would slow up a little bit and we could monitor it more closely and have input. But I am concerned about some of these passing on of property that is, if this passes, will no longer be allowed, whether it's from a parent to a child or a grandparent to a grandchild. Also, I believe it impacts commercial property and also second homes. And one good element, though, is that if you're 55 or older, or I believe disabled, you have the ability to carry that base value. So, for instance, let's say you had a home in San Francisco and you want to move to the Sacramento area, you could carry that base value of your home that you had for a long period of time and retain it. So if you've had that home for a long period, let's say you paid $100,000 for the home and it's worth $1 million now, you can carry that $100,000 base and move, if this passes, move to any county in the state of California. But I think Member Cohen is asking great questions, and we just don't know the answers to everything. And I'd sure like it all laid out as you suggested in an informational hearing. So thank you.
Will do. If hearing no other comments, I will work with Ms. Flemings to agendize this hearing,
Right.
hopefully this next month.
Great.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Ms. Davis, can we move on to the next item?
The next item is K5, Taxpayers' Rights Advocates Office Report, presented by Ms. Lisa Thompson, Taxpayer Rights Advocate. Ms. Thompson, are you available?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Vasquez and honorable board members. I am Lisa Thompson, Chief of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. I'm here to provide you with an update on the activities of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office.
This is interesting. Yeah.
The first item I would like to address is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing. Last month, I provided an update about notification efforts for the upcoming Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing at the August board meeting, August 18th. I indicated that posters and flyers were distributed to county officials involved in the property tax system. And at last month's board meeting, I also indicated that a letter to assessors would be issued shortly, notifying assessors, staff, and other interested parties of the hearing. That letter to assessors, LTA number 2020-029, was sent out on June 29th, 2020. And to give additional exposure for our Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing, we requested that the Franchise Tax Board Advocates Assistant. We were aware that FTB puts out a monthly newsletter called Tax News that they sometimes include articles about other agencies. So we asked if we could include an article about our upcoming Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing. They agreed, and it will be included in their August 2020 tax news that will be distributed at the end of this month. The distribution includes about 35,000 tax professionals, so it will gain a lot of exposure. It briefly describes the programs our agency is responsible for, the purpose of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing, as to it allowing taxpayers and taxpayer and also industry representatives to provide comments on items discussed in the Taxpayer Rights Advocate annual report, and to present ideas, comments, and other input on agency services. The article also identifies the composition of our agency's 5-member board and extends the opportunities for parties to come before this elected board to have their voices heard. It provides a link to our website where readers can obtain more information about the hearing. Future actions will be to issue a press release about the hearing and also to reach out to taxpayer organizations providing information on the purpose and format of the hearing, seeking their assistance in notifying their members and taxpayers about the hearing. As I indicated previously, we will be reaching out to the California Taxpayers Association, CalTax, California Chamber of Commerce, California Society of Enrolled Tax Agents, Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Spidell Publishing, and also new for this year, the California Society of CPAs. The next item that I wanted to update you on is about some information on taxpayer cases for the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. I am pleased to provide some statistics for the amount of taxpayer cases that were received during fiscal year 2019-20 by our office. I will be reporting how many cases originated from taxpayers and constituents in each of the board member districts for website and telephone inquiries, as well as for taxpayer cases that were forwarded from a board member's office. As far as some counts, there were 229 cases originating from phone calls or submitted through the Taxpayer Rights Advocate webpage on our agency's website. 226 of those could be identified by a specific county and therefore by district. The others were where the taxpayer chose not to identify the county or the property. With respect to board member Gaines's district, District 1, for the phone calls and webpage inquiries or cases. 85 of the cases were from District 1. 88 of the cases were from Board Member Cohen's district, District 2. 12 from Board Member Vasquez district, District 3, and 41 from Board Member Schaefer's district, District 4. With respect to the number of cases where the taxpayer contacted the board member's office directly and was forwarded to us to help, there were 21 cases in fiscal year 2019-20. 16 from District 1, 2 from District 2, and 3 from the Controller's office. In total, there were 250 cases that our office received during the fiscal year, and 229 web or phone, plus the 21 forwarded from the board member's office. In addition to these cases, we responded to phone calls from taxpayers where we helped taxpayers with questions which were not set up as a case. As a result of the COVID-19 situation, from March through June, our office, as well as the property tax department, helped many taxpayers by answering questions that they had about extensions of time to pay their property tax, relief for penalties, and extensions of time to complete base year value transfers. Because many government offices were closed to the public, taxpayers were extremely worried about being able to make their property tax payments, and some had financial constraints. So we directed them to resources about extensions for making payments and how they could request penalty cancellation, as well as walk taxpayers through how to navigate different county tax collector websites so they could make payments electronically, and find email contact information, as well as information on how to find the penalty cancellation requests and submit them. I would also like to describe some of the major topic areas for cases that we received and how we help those taxpayers. For one area that we continue to have taxpayers contacting our offices about with challenges are the area of parent-to-child transfer exclusions from reassessments, as well as for base year value transfers from an original property to a replacement property for persons age 55 and over. The majority of these cases are where the assessor denied the claim request because of one or more of the requirements were not met. For example, in the case of the parent-to-child transfer, where the taxpayer sold a home to a third party before they filed a claim form, or in the case of a base year value transfer for persons over 55, where the applicant did not meet the market value requirement for the replacement to be of equal or lesser value than the original property's market value as defined by statute. Also, where the taxpayer applied for the base year value transfer exclusion, but had also filed a claim for the parent-to-child exclusion on the home that they sold to their child. To help these taxpayers, our office coordinates with county assessors' offices to find out information on the taxpayer's application and reasons for the determination made by the assessor's office. We also review statutory provisions in law and compare that to a particular taxpayer's situation and ensure they were treated fairly in accordance to the law. Where there is something that we can do to enable the taxpayer to qualify, then we explain that to the taxpayer and help facilitate resolution with the assessor's office, or we explain to the taxpayer why the assessor was correct in its determination. To further assist taxpayers in understanding the base year value transfer provisions of Revenue and Taxation Code Section 69.5, we revised our information sheet on the transfer of property tax base to replacement property for persons age 55 and older to include language making them aware that although the base year value transfer from one home to another can only be made once for being age 55 or older, if that person or their spouse residing with them later becomes permanently or severely disabled, then they can receive another base year value transfer if they need to move to the replacement residence in order to meet the needs of that disability. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office also issued a new information sheet discussing the transfer of property tax base to the replacement property for disabled persons, so they were aware of property tax savings that might be available to them. Another area where we have a lot of taxpayer cases involved increased assessments and property taxes related to change in ownership or new construction, and also due to market value changes. For example, when people buy a house, they receive a supplemental assessment, and the property tax bill is issued much later than when they purchased the house. So we confirm that the supplemental assessment they received was correct by comparing the assessed value to the prior owner and the market value of the property reflecting that change in ownership when that taxpayer bought the property. Depending on the date that the property was purchased, a taxpayer can actually receive 2 supplemental tax bills, 1 or 2. So we verified that the assessor did that correct and then explained that to the taxpayer. Another example is when taxpayers contact our office because they feel their property taxes have increased too much. And there really can be various reasons causing an increase to the amount that they're paying on their property tax bill. In some cases, their property's assessment increases were more than 2% a year. So we work with the county assessor's office to determine what their assessment was based on to ensure that the increased assessment complies with Proposition 13. We help the taxpayer understand the limitations of Proposition 13 for the maximum of 2%, as to it being on the factored base year value, and it does not apply when property is assessed at market value under a decline in value status that's lower than its factored base year value. So we try to help the taxpayer understand that and provide some references for them in addition to our explanation and discussions. In other cases, the increases in amount that they have paid on their property tax is actually not for ad valorem property taxes per se. It is instead a special assessment or a Mello-Roos fee, which is actually not a property tax. In some cases, it might be for a sewer or water charge that are billed on the property tax bill for a particular city and county that we have found. So we kind of explain that, you know, the property tax amount that they're paying on this property tax bill isn't necessarily all property taxes, and that property tax bill is a mechanism to collect much more than just the ad valorem property taxes. So in those cases, we kind of direct them to other resources, and we do confirm that how their assessment has increased in the last few years for that, just to give them some assurance that if they're limited to the Prop 13 increases, that we kind of show them that. So for the next part, so California property taxes has many components. So we are contacted by taxpayers having a wide range of problems or concerns. In each case, our office conducts research and provides information to the taxpayer to help them with their situation. We always direct them to resources and extend the opportunity for them to contact us for future questions. We're available to taxpayers by phone or by web, email as well. In the upcoming year, one of the items that our office will be focusing on is developing materials that will help educate taxpayers about the need to file a parent-to-child claim form before they sell their house or property that they have inherited from their parent who passed away. We believe a good way is to develop an information sheet that discusses what needs to be done for property tax purposes when a real property owner dies. As part of that, an information sheet that we plan to develop where we can educate taxpayers on the importance to complete and submit a claim for reassessment exclusion to the county assessor's office if the transfer is from a parent to child or the grandparent to child that qualifies for exclusion. It is key that taxpayers know this before they sell their property, that they have inherited from a parent or grandparent. Otherwise, they are not able to receive the exclusion if they sell it to a third party first. So, you know, the death of a parent is a difficult time. So if we're able to provide information to taxpayers to help them understand what should be filed to comply with the property tax law and save them some money by avoiding reassessment, even if it's for a short period of time between the date of death and when they sell the property, I think it'll be beneficial. So that's kind of where we're going to strive for in the upcoming year. This concludes my update. I am happy to answer any questions that the board members may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for any of the members?
Yes, Member Schaefer.
Member Schaefer, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Ms. Thompson, what is the average amount of money involved in your 229 cases? Is it 10,000 or less in dispute, or 100,000 less in dispute? Do you have any understanding of what the average dispute involves?
Thank you, Board Member Schaefer. So they really vary, quite frankly. But I mean, if you're looking at just a property reassessment, if you were to say, just for the parent to child situation, if you have a situation where the house that you inherited, say, is in a fairly affluent area that has high market values, but your parents purchased it in the late 70s, 80s, there's obviously a significant market value difference between what it was as far as when it was market value, when it was assessed, and that factored base year value, compared to many, many years later. So it could be that the property is assessed at maybe $80,000 when the market value is $1,080,000. So, you have a potential assessment value savings of $1 million. So it can be quite substantial, and just with the 1% tax rate. So, it does, it does vary. So.
All right. Could I ask you what the budget is for your office for the last year?
I'm happy to take that information and discuss that with you offline with Executive Director Brenda Fleming and provide some additional information with her assistance.
Well, I beg your pardon, but I don't think we need additional information. The budget for the Taxpayers Assistance Office is either, 1 million, 100 million. You should know what it is. You are in charge of that office.
As far as staffing, I mean, if you're looking at staffing levels,
I'm looking at the cost of yourself and everybody that works for you.
Right. I'll have to research that and get back to you. Thank you.
Mr. Schaefer, this is Ms. Fleming. Thank you for your questions, and sir, we'll come back to you on that level of specific information. But thank you for asking.
Ms. Fleming, could I ask you, Ms. Fleming, that question? What is the estimated budget for the Taxpayers Assistance Office? You would know it if she doesn't.
Yes, sir, and we'll be happy to circle back with you on that information.
Well, could you circle back for me right now? This is a public question.
Yeah, unfortunately, sir, we don't have that information at your fingertips because that level of specific detail wasn't on our agenda for discussion, but I'm more than happy to go pull that data for you.
Okay, well, I will ask that question next time the opportunity arises.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Any other questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I could, Member Gaines.
Member Gaines, go ahead, Member Gaines.
So I want to thank Lisa Thompson for her presentation. And, each year I try to focus on how do we get the word out to our constituents, because we each represent just under 10 million people in our districts, and yet I look at the response to the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office, and Member Cohen and myself seem to have most of the cases, and I'm just curious. You mentioned outreach to different organizations. So is that different than what we have done in the past in terms of trying to get the word out that if a taxpayer is having an issue with their property, that we can help them out? That would be to Ms. Thompson, Lisa Thompson.
Right. So, so when I took this position in early 2018, we kind of expanded our outreach efforts. Previously, there were notices, notices of the hearing distributed to the same interested parties and recipients that the letters to assessors distribution list was, but it was not memorialized in a formal letter to assessors. So that was one change that was made when I came on board. So that provides more exposure and then allows that to be posted. The first year, 18, that the LTA didn't come out, but 19 and 20 were the years that we put the LTA together. And then last year, for the 2019 Bill of Rights hearing, I just kind of thought of some additional, taxpayer organizations that we could really reach out to and ask them to distribute it to their, to their members and to their list, just so we get additional exposure. And so at that time, there were 5 organizations last year that were distributed this information, and that was, again, to CalTax, they have a large membership, and then the California Chamber of Commerce, California Society of Enrolled Tax Agents, and Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Spidell Publishing. So, as you're familiar with, is they all have large memberships and large distribution, so they could notify their members either by their, e-blasts or newsletters and other, means that they, notify their parties of that. And then this year, because, we wanted to, again, get the words out to as many taxpayers and their taxpayer representatives as possible, is we're adding the California Society of CPAs, and so I have a contact with them, and so we'll reach out to them and ask them to notify us. That will kind of follow, I think, the when the news release is done. So.
Okay, so are we finding that our inquiries are increasing on a per district basis as a result of the additional outreach?
Well, that's for this outreach as far as, indirectly. It's more of to notify them of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing, but just by having taxpayers have the additional exposure through these, taxpayer organizations, then they do get to our web page. But yeah, we have more taxpayer cases this year, at least this past fiscal year, than the year before. But it really varies. It's not, we can't really tie it to, to anything specific. Of course, COVID-19 caused a lot more inquiries into our office, but we did not list them. We didn't include them in our case counts because they really didn't develop into cases that we were, working. They were rather, answering their taxpayer questions on the phone as quickly as possible, and so providing information. But we probably in our office did at least 20, 25, and I'm sure Property Tax did a lot more.
Okay, and this would be through Executive Director Fleming. I'm just wondering if we can take a look at this, at the data. I'd love to see what it looked like in years past in terms of the actual number of cases from year to year, so that we can reflect on what's happening historically, and if the changes that we're seeing happen are actually improving our outreach to taxpayers. And then I'd love to track the phone calls too, because I mean, if we're taking care of an issue for a taxpayer that doesn't turn into a case, let's say we're just someone's asking a question and they're getting it answered. It'd be nice to know how many calls are coming in and how many questions are we answering for folks.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, that would be good data to have, and we'll definitely take a look at it to see, how quickly we can turn that around. Some of that information, just for general reference, is also in the TRA annual report, and we're in the process, as Ms. Renati has reported before, getting some more tools and functionality that allows us to have, more data, more visibility, and then she can just provide more input to, what's being covered successfully. And what I'm also interested in is what would be some of those trends. That data tells us about trends, so we will know how to do more education and outreach kinds of activities. So we definitely will. I'll work with Ms. Thompson to make some progress there.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Thompson, and thank you, Executive Director Fleming. Appreciate it.
And I'm happy to provide a little more information about that at next month's meeting for the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing, because we will be discussing kind of the annual report and the contents of the last published annual report for the prior fiscal year. And I'm happy to, include some, comparisons of prior years as far as number of cases and that as well, and go over some more as phone calls.
That's great. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Thompson, thank you for your report.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, real quick though, if I could just ask you, I know you mentioned that you've actually fielded a lot of questions, especially on folks that were looking to transfer, I guess, parent to child transfer on property. Have we in the past, I guess now with COVID, it's a little bit difficult, but in the past, have we ever done much in terms of just like informational hearings on explaining, because I think you hit it on the nail earlier. I know I always get calls on this, especially now in my new role, from local folks here about our property tax, and they just assume that, what they're paying is all tied to property, when in fact it isn't. We in Santa Monica, for example, we have parcel taxes, we have school bonds, construction bonds from both the college, the school district, and the city sometimes, and they're all funneled through this method of collecting our property tax. And people sometimes think that's all tied into that, all of a sudden we're bumping up the cost of what we're charging for property tax, when in fact it isn't.
Right. That's something that we could kind of consider. I mean, we'd have to figure out how we would present it, because like the property tax bill, tax collectors have a lot of information about what's on the property tax bill. And we don't really have, our agency doesn't have jurisdiction over the tax collector, but we might be able to kind of explain, a little bit about property taxes, and then within that information sheet, indicate, well, that, the ad valorem property taxes, is collected on the property, on the tax bill sent by the tax collector, and then we could, maybe incorporate something within that to explain that not everything on your property tax bill is actually ad valorem property taxes. So thank you. We'll take that into consideration and see if we could develop something.
Thank you. No, it was a great report. I appreciate it. And I know you'll come back next month and give us some more information, and hopefully let's see if there is any trends. And sounds like from your report that obviously given COVID, you're probably getting a lot more calls that people are concerned what's, what relief, if any, they can have moving forward, right?
Mr. Chair, I'm curious to ask a question to Ms. Thompson. Good morning, since Malia Cohen. I wanted to know if anyone reached out or raised questions about the implications of Prop 19 or ACA 11. Have taxpayers started thinking about what this proposed legislative change, or I should say initiative change, how it would impact them?
We've gotten a few calls, but because that's not existing property tax law, we would not address that. What we have done is we've suggested that they go out, is they can read about the information that's actually filed with the Secretary of State. So that's with all of the initiatives, that those are all filed at the Secretary of State level. So we've kind of directed them to some resources for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great report. I don't think there's any other questions.
Vice Chair Schaefer again.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Thompson, I'm always concerned between the length of time between the end of your fiscal year and when your report is distributed. I think it's getting to be about a year where I think our own annual report comes out like within 6 months or less. Do you have any reason why it takes so much longer for your department's annual report to be published?
Well, our report actually is published at the beginning of the year, generally January, February. So it's about 6 months after the fiscal year. So first of all, at the end of the fiscal year, we have to be able to compile the information and have some examples. We also reach out to the assessors to ask for information on customer service improvements that they have made to their constituents, and we incorporate that into the report. So we always give them some time to do that. That outreach is always done after the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing for that current year to make that separation, and also give the assessors time to compile it, because as you know, they are busy during their certain times of the year, closing their assessment rolls. And so that's why that takes some time. And then once we compile it, we of course put the information together and then send it to the CDTFA for forms of publication so they can develop it. But we can't, ideally, we'll try to do it a little bit earlier, but we like to get it within that calendar year at least, because we're not going to do the Taxpayer Bill of Rights until August. So we kind of space that out to allow more time.
How much time do you give the assessors to respond? And do they all respond? Could you tell me that our 58 assessors all respond within 15 or 30 days of your request?
It's just asking them. They don't need to respond. So as part of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing next month, I'll be going over some of those counties that submitted information for us to consider. But no, it has not been all 58 counties. So that's kind of what that information is done. But we generally allow them a month or so to respond.
Well, I wouldn't like a month.
I'll be happy to go over the counties.
Yeah, I would like a firm 30 days, and you're saying they don't have any obligation to respond to you. I would think they would have an obligation to respond to you, if for nothing other than to respond to say that we have nothing to report.
Well, as a matter of, I think, practice, assessors have customer service improvements all the time. I mean, they're providing customer service to their constituents, daily. But these are, kind of major accomplishments, and so those are the things that we're going to go over that they submitted to us that they would like highlighted. So I'm happy to go over those in next month's board meeting for you, Mr. Schaefer.
I'm just wanting your office to be efficient. Okay, that's my understanding. All right, thank you.
That's what we try to be.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez.
Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Thompson. Hearing no other comments or questions, Ms. Davis, if you'd please call the next item.
The next item is L2A, Board Member Initiatives, Board Workforce Planning Work Group. This item will be presented by Chairman Vasquez.
Thank you. Members, at our last meeting, we agreed to 3 things. 1, have the ED and the Deputy Director of Property Tax present the details of the state of BOE requirements for property tax appraisers. David Young just did that at his report today, and I want to thank him for his report. And he mentioned also that he would elaborate a little bit more on this at the informational hearing tomorrow. The second one was to move forward with our statewide workforce planning work group project that got sidetracked by this pandemic. If you're all in agreement, I intend to agendize a statewide workforce public hearing on recruitment, retention, and training of our August, at our August board meeting for all the stakeholders. We will need input from assessors and the AABs and the colleges in our districts. And the timing is critical as we face this new property tax initiative on the ballot. The third one was to provide a district report that may be of interest to each other, just to clear the air. This is not part of the workforce planning work group, but is strictly an informational item on this project in one of our districts, as the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office discussed with you at our January board meeting. Assessor Prang is developing a two-pronged college appraisers workforce training program, one for the 4-year bachelor's degree candidates and two for the 2-year appraisal degree, and working with various community colleges in his area. Substantial progress has been made, and I will report to you in the future once these plans unfold. To extent it's helpful to other counties or the state, I would encourage you to share projects that assessors in your districts may be working on as well. We're starting to hear several others throughout the state that are beginning to engage in this. I had a real good meeting just last week with my assessor and the chancellor, and they're really moving this thing forward. They're trying to fast track this thing. So hopefully we'll have a good report for you, if not at the next meeting, real soon or shortly after that, to give you some updates. But with that, I want to just assure everybody that we'll continue to move forward and get input from you all, especially on this larger group, the statewide workforce planning work group, because I think we need to look at it, obviously, on the big picture as well, that would impact the state as a whole, especially if split roll goes forward. And in many cases, you know, as we're hearing from, especially some of the large counties, even if it doesn't go forward, many of them are impacted already, and they're feeling the pinch as they're moving forward to try to keep up with their workload, given their workforce in that area of appraisers that are leaving early or are jumping into the private sector, and in other cases, those that are just retiring. But with that, let me open it up to see if there's any questions from any of the members on this.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
So respectfully, as I recall, we agreed to convene the group. I want to make sure that what you're proposing for in August is fair and transparent, and that it's a session that would allow everyone to participate. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I believe I previously had highlighted the issues, as well as made some suggestions as to participants that should be able to participate in such a meeting, such a work group meeting. It's still on the table and being considered.
Yes, yes. I'm hoping.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Help you, and I said I will certainly help you reach out and get stakeholders to the key stakeholders to the table. Just want to make sure that this is open and inclusive, and of course always transparent, and that we're not having these private silos.
I lost you, Ms. Cohen.
Yep.
Ms. Cohen? You were breaking up. I lost you there. Can you hear me?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I've been having trouble all morning with my internet. I just wanted to make sure that it's open, publicly noticed, transparent, and that these work groups, everyone is able to participate in.
Yes. When we're talking about the statewide workforce group, that's exactly where we're heading with it. The only difference is that the pilot that I think I mentioned to you in this report with the LA County, that's being fast tracked, and it's basically because my assessor Jeff Prang and the chancellor in LA. I mean, they're aggressive. They just need to fill these positions as soon as possible. So we're going to continue that one on a different.
Well, perhaps I understand it's happening in LA County, but perhaps we need to agendize that item so that we all collectively be brought up to speed as to what's happening, where this project is, and as it continues to unfold. Perhaps you can agenda. If not you, I will agendize it and ask that they come and prepare an update for us.
Not a problem. We'll come back and report back as things are developing. I'm just letting you know that there's been several meetings and there'll be other meetings prior to probably our next board meeting, specifically on this pilot. But the state, the larger one that we were talked about, that, I appreciate any help you can give us to make sure that we're being as inclusive and as transparent as possible as we move forward on this statewide workforce project that we're looking.
I just wanted, just as a reminder, I hope you all can hear. Apologies if my internet is still shaky today. We voted to bring back this matter to a board at our last board meeting. So I was expecting to hear a little bit more of an update. I mean, like what's happening.
Are you asking for the statewide now? You're breaking up, so I'm not really clear.
I want to know both. I want to know what's happening in LA County, and I want to know what's happening statewide level.
Oh, not a problem. I mean, on the statewide, that one we haven't met, and we're looking to call that meeting in August, and we'll definitely reach out to you and other members to make sure we're being as inclusive on the statewide larger group. In terms of the LA County pilot program, what I could do is I will send out a report of what we've done to date, so all the members have it, and share it with you. And we could definitely agendize it at the next meeting and maybe give maybe a more full detailed report of what steps have been done and where we're at, and kind of a timeline where we see that going. That hopefully will be helpful to other districts throughout the state.
Member Vasquez?
Yes, Mr. Gaines.
Yeah. If I could just weigh in, because we've had communication with our local community college districts in the Sacramento region, but I really want to see what LA is doing, because I think what they're creating is a template that could be replicated throughout the state. And so I appreciate LA taking that lead and having that communication occurring with our local community colleges, and see what we can take from it without reinventing the wheel.
Sure, not a problem. Well, we will definitely share that with. Matter of fact, at our last meeting, somebody brought up one of the community colleges in your area. I believe it was El Rios or something, Rios Community College District.
Yeah, Los Rios.
Los Rios.
Yeah.
That apparently has been moving pretty fast, is also looking to try to fast track this as well.
Well, we're communicating with Sierra College and also Los Rios. Thank you.
No, we will do that. Not a problem. But I just wanted to be clear to let people know that the one that we're doing with LA County is pretty much this district right now. It's within my district, is really the focus of it. But this pilot definitely could be shared, and hopefully it'd be helpful to many of you in your areas as well. With that, Ms. Davis, do we have anybody from the public that was looking to speak on this?
AT&T moderator, could you please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time?
Absolutely. If you have a public comment, you may hit 1, then 0 at this time. Once again, you may hit 1, then 0. At this time, there's no one in queue.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like we don't have any public comments on this matter at this time.
Thank you.
I have a question that I'd like to direct to Ms. Fleming. Good afternoon, Ms. Fleming. Just so I'm clear, what was the board's action at our prior meeting regarding this subject matter?
Thank you for that question. So the two actions were to have agency staff working along with President Don Gakel from CAA to come back and just provide a overview of the training, the appraiser training and certification requirements. Both Mr. Gakel and Mr. Young are prepared to bring the clarification to that today as the board is the board's pleasure. The second item, as the chairman was just indicating, that he would give more information and reporting on the progress of the work that's happening within his district, working specifically with the LA County assessor. But that, again, is I think what we were trying to do in the discussion from the June meeting was bring the clarity to the distinctions between what's happening as a district project for LA County assessor, specifically for his recruitment efforts at a local level, versus what's happening at the state level and the California community colleges. So staff,
Thank you.
President Gakel and Mr. Young are available. It's a board's pleasure if you would like to hear that report.
Mr. Chair, if you don't, I'd be very interested in hearing staff's perspective as well as Mr. Gakel's perspective on this matter.
Sure, go ahead. Are they available online?
Yes, this is David.
Yes. This is Don Gakel.
If it's okay, Don, I will try to lay out the current statutory, regulatory, and policy that we operate under for the certification of the appraisers. So right now, the way it stands is those three categories basically prescribe how we certify appraisers to do property tax appraisals, valuations for property tax. So under the statutory provisions, it is Revenue and Taxation Codes 670 through 673. For the regulations, it is our board's property tax rules 281 to 284 through 284. And as policy, it is the guidelines for certification and training of appraisers as adopted by the board in 2015, and that can be found in LTA 2015-049. So under statute, under 670, basically it requires that anybody who does appraisal work for ad valorem taxation need to be certified by the Board of Equalization. And in specific in that language, they say that the board shall promulgate rules that govern this certification. And so we have promulgated property tax rules 281 through 284. Under 283, we lay out the provisions it would take to get such a certification. The two initial requirements are that you, one, have a bona fide offer of work or are currently employed by either the assessor's office or the Board of Equalization. And the second thing is, now the second one is the multi-tier one. One way of qualifying is that you need a 4-year degree. In lieu of a 4-year degree, you can have 4 years of qualifying relevant experience. And we list the relevant experience that you can have that would allow you to qualify. They include selling real estate, certain contractors, private fee appraisers, or you can have a combination of years of education and qualifying relevant experience. So you may be able to have 2 years worth of college and 2 years of other qualifying experience, either a private appraiser or selling real estate. That would qualify you also for a certification. Plus, you have to pass our certification test. There is one extra provision in Revenue Taxation Code 670 for someone to do an audit for property tax purposes. You need a degree specializing in accounting and auditing. So we have set out in our policy and the guidelines that were board adopted in 2012 what that actually entails. It's either a degree from a higher institute of higher learning. It can be defined as one, an actual accounting degree, or you can have certain coursework, 18 units in accounting and auditing, or 19 units if you include in a class in either economics or in business law. So those are the requirements. In general, the requirements are either you need a 4-year degree or you need relevant experience totaling 4 years degree, totaling 4 years, or any combination thereof. So that in general is the state of the law, the regulations, and the policy in which we work under. As for so that lays out the general groundwork. Maybe I can, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or I can propose a couple of scenarios in which would require changes or not. Do I have any questions so far?
Members? No, you want to go ahead and roll out a couple of scenarios then, Dave?
Of course. So for the counties that wish to develop a program which augments their training, either alleviates them of some of their training issues or just to augment their training program, I think that is, personally, I think that's a great idea, and actually the board has already done so. In 2008, the board actually developed 2 classes with the Los Rios Community School District, the Community College District, and we offer now 2 courses through American River College, ARC. One is basic appraisal for property tax purposes, and the other one is an auditing class. Those classes were initially board taught classes. We worked with ARC in developing a curriculum that would fit their needs and ours. So now what happened is they are full ARC, American River College classes. You register through the college, the junior college. You get credits through the junior college, and you pay your reg fees through the junior college. We actually have 2 staff members, senior staff members, that act as adjunct lecturers, and they actually teach the class. There are 2 online classes. That requires no modification to our policy, nor new regulations, nor statute. That's perfect. That's fine. The other scenario is if there is consideration in changing the 4-year requirement, either a 4-year college degree or 4 years of relevant experience, that would require a amendment to Revenue and Taxation Code 670D and a rule amendment to both our property tax rules 282 and 283. The last scenario that I kind of want to put out there for your consideration is if you want to do a hybrid of those two scenarios that I just proposed, a county wishes to involve a junior college or any college in teaching some of their courses, that is fine. And if they want to set up a training program or or an assistant program after they graduate from the AA degree, a 2-year degree, they would be able to, if they wish to set up that type of apprentice program or a training program, that is okay as long as that person with the 2-year degree but with no other qualifying relevant experience only does basically assist the appraisers. They do not, what they cannot do is exercise judgment and put a value on the assessment roll where taxes are calculated from. So those 3 scenarios are what I thought would be most illustrative. 1, setting up a strict training program requires no change. Second, if you want to only allow a 2-year degree with no other qualifying or relevant experience, that would require both a statutory and a regulatory change. And the third, if you want to set up a hybrid program where you do set up a training program with the local colleges and with an AA can come in as a assistant or someone who is a trainee that does other work to assist and help in the assessment and appraisal process, but does not exercise judgment, that would also require no change in statute, regulations, or our policies.
Thank you. It looks like Member Cohen has a question for you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dave and Mr. Young. And I mean, it really sounds like from Mr. Young's report that the board provided a lot of lead in this area. And what we're talking about is what basically you've already created and what you've created across the entire state. And it sounds like it maybe needs some tweaking so that it's scalable. And we make necessary modifications where necessary. Just also want to acknowledge that the agency has been a leader in this space, and it seems like we quite possibly could be reinventing the wheel. Am I hearing this incorrectly, or is there some real distinction in what LA County is trying to do versus what already exists with the BOE?
If I may attempt to answer that. What we've done is very specific to our 2 training classes that we used to offer. What we wanted to do was, one, that was developed when in 2008 it was start of the Great Recession. A lot of assessors and us, we had limited travel budgets, so we wanted to be able to offer these classes without the necessary travel and associated with that. And so we were able to do that through the ARC partnership. It is a roadmap. It's been done, and I think we've kind of, if you look at it, we were the basically proof of concept experiment. We showed that it can be done. Now the issue of scalability, I mean, we've offered 2 classes to the extent that it could be expanded and broadened. I think would be beneficial to all stakeholders. It probably would help It would probably help assessors in training and recruiting, and it would, in the long run, perhaps even help the BOE in the amount of classes that we need to offer. So however this works, whether it's scaled up all the way throughout the state or to different counties who wish to move it forward, I think has the potential to benefit both sides of the house, both the assessors and us.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Fleming, I know you're listening to the discussion. Do you have anything that you could share with us?
No, thank you for that opportunity, and Dave, thanks for the report. I think, not to restate what Dave said, but it was something that was in the 2009 timeframe, something we did out of necessity, and so basically, to translate that into current terms, it's online training. Again, the scope of the current classes is just a couple of courses, but as you know, with any online training, that can be expanded. The benefit of the online training is that anyone can take it from anywhere, right? So you have that mechanism. We also have, Dave did mention, and he might comment on it, because we also have some other localized training through Sac State, but of a different model. So I think, when we look at this program and we have this as an element under the strategic plan, the one that the agency does, so that absolutely aligns with what the board members' plan in terms of workforce, as we started discussing in September at the information hearing. What we're looking at is the long-term opportunities for workforce development. And online training is going to give us the ability to do two things. One, it's going to give us the ability to provide training during this COVID-19 timeframe for however long it lasts, so we can provide training, people can still engage in it. But it also, as it relates to the strategic goals, allows us, from a modernization perspective, to look at the next generation of potential, appraisal professionals. That next generation of those professionals, it is probably, online training is probably more in line with how they would like to take advantage of training, because it would also be a more cost-effective way of approaching it. So it has some value. We've got some things that we are planning to help expand it. I've got some of that on hold pending this conversation under the member strategic plan and just a continuation of the discussion we started in September. And that is to really, how do we fill these gaps with the appraisers? So yes, we can take advantage of it. It's something, as Dave mentioned, it's scalable for sure. If a county doesn't want to take it on specifically with their local community college, it is something that could, be leveraged to the California community colleges or individual counties can participate with their local community colleges. So I heard Mr. Gaines, for example, say Sierra College, et cetera. So we can make it go either way, because again, online training, the whole benefit is it just gives you that flexibility. So we're prepared to be both members to support, what we're all trying to achieve, and that is really to invest in the opportunity to get a broader and a more qualified candidate pool of appraisals.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to go back, because I think that the agency is uniquely situated to provide leadership in this space, and that we need all hands on deck to help us leverage this outstanding work to the next level. We started the process in 2019. And certainly remain committed to seeing it all the way through. Thank you.
Thank you. No, we will definitely reach out to you and other members to make sure we're being as inclusive as possible with reps from folks throughout the state on this larger statewide workforce planning group.
Chairman, if I may, this is just a comment. Just as it relates to LA County, and Dave, please, jump in and correct me if I'm misstating, but I think what LA, as I understand it, I think what LA is trying to achieve is really local to his district, where it looks like They have, just in a broad context, LA has when they do their recruitments for appraisers, it's a very large application pool. So they've got a couple of thousand applicants that are applying, but by the time they go through the recruitment process, the first gate, if you will, of people who apply for it shrinks down significantly. And I think in our conversations over the years with them, I think they're just really trying to work more closely with their local community colleges, just to offer some of the courses that we offer and authorize, so they get a stronger and a better qualified pool of applicants. And so some of that we already have in place, as Dave, I think, mentioned with LA. So I think they're just expanding it, as was mentioned earlier, where they're taking some of their existing staff, LA County staff, who are trainers, and really sort of outsourcing that service to the local community college. So from that perspective, I think is what they're trying to achieve. And I think at a local level, working with the, and I haven't gotten into this detail, but probably with, County Board of Supervisors, just trying to get funding and support to just increase their candidates. I think that's from our understanding of it, that's the reference to what they're doing at a local level. So there's certainly going to be elements that are already there based upon what they've leveraged for what we do at the Los Rios Community College. But again, that program is scalable also.
No, you're right. And I think another big key element here that they're trying to do in LA County is that locally, the county, the Board of Supervisors have this requirement that all appraisers have to have a 4-year degree. So they're looking to make I believe it's going to fall under an ordinance change there locally to make those adjustments if we were able to create this emergency, what we're calling an emergency certificate for appraisers. That's probably the big change. And I think at the statewide level, I think Dave mentioned as well, there's other ways to possibly qualify under the BOE current regs besides the 4-year degree. So that's what they're exploring as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
No, thank you. Thank you all. Ms. Davis, I think we're good. Because you said there's nobody from the public that needed to speak on this?
That is correct.
So with that, can we move on to the next item?
The next item, just one moment.
Excuse me very quickly. I thought we were going to, I also wanted to hear from Don Gakel. We heard from staff, and I want to hear from Don Gakel from the Assessors Association to get his thoughts.
Oh, that's what I was asking, if there was anybody in the public in the queue waiting. You said there was nobody.
I know, I misheard. I thought you were asking for public comment. There's Don Gakel, I believe, is on the call.
Yeah. I am here, and I thought the same thing. I thought you were asking for public comment rather than
Thank you.
my comment.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, interesting discussion. I know that to start off with, yes, in LA County, they obviously had a requirement strictly for a 4-year degree. I know that the Board of Equalization regulations require 4 years, and that's either through any combination. A 4-year degree will suffice for certification. A 2-year degree with 2 years of relevant experience, or 4 years of relevant experience, all those things would qualify. And that's certainly what we do in Stanislaus County. Any combination that results in 4 years of education or relevant experience will qualify in our county. And I think Chair Vasquez is correct. LA County required a 4-year degree. My understanding in talking to George Rinke and Jeff Prang in LA County is that what they went to the board with was to create an appraiser trainee program where somebody could come in with perhaps a 2-year degree and then work in some non-appraiser capacity to get the experience that they needed. We do something similar in our county with an assistant appraiser position where the incumbents are gathering information, gathering permits, making drawings, doing cost analysis after an appraiser has a designated quality distinction, those sorts of things. Some of the things that David Young talked about. And a lot of assessors, we reached out to survey assessors on a question of 2-year versus 4-year. A lot of assessors responded that they are interested in creating assessor trainee programs where they would take people in with perhaps 2 years of education, give them relevant experience as assistants to appraisers, and then roll them into the appraiser program once they had 4-year equivalent experience, either through education or work experience. And so those things also, this kind of started out with the idea of, in part, getting a certificate with, say, only 2 years of education. We surveyed assessors, and it was clear that weighted by population of the counties responding that clearly 80% of the counties were not in favor of changing from a 4-year standard for the appraiser position, but they were open to bringing people in an appraiser trainee capacity and letting them get the experience in the office before they become an appraisers after 4-year experience. So those were the results of our survey. Certainly on the statewide education program, training is something that all assessors are looking for, and if that can be provided in a community college setting, certainly I don't think there are any assessors who would not want to take advantage of that if they could get a better pool of candidates applying for jobs in their offices. LA County had their own training program in-house, and one of their motivations in anticipation of the split role initiative was to take that training program out of their office, put it into community college setting, and free up appraisal staff, their trainers, to work on commercial and industrial property valuations. So there were a couple of motivations there in preparation for a potential split role. So those are my comments, and I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the members?
I don't have any specific question. I just wanted to acknowledge the staff work on this that's already been in existence, and Don Gakel affirming what we already know, and also acknowledging that there needs to be a sense of urgency as we continue to move this forward. And I'm not looking to be an obstructionist, but I do want to be very careful and thoughtful about how we do this, and we don't leave anyone behind. And I believe our role in the State Board of Equalization is to set the standard for the entire state, to create a standard, a template that is scalable for individual counties and individual county assessors. So that is the position that I'm coming to, the energy that I'm bringing to this matter.
Thank you. No other comments or questions? Ms. Davis, if you could please call the next item.
Yes, sir. Our final item for the day is item N, public comment on matters not on the agenda. At this time, we have not received any public comments. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment on items not on the agenda at this time?
Yes, if you have a public comment, you may hit 1 and 0 at this time. At this time, there are no public comments in queue.
And Ms. Davis, just so the record is clear, this is Acting Board Proceedings Chief Henry Nanjo. We had a number of speakers signed up to comment on the M item, but since they've been advised that the M item is being postponed to August, I believe we have confirmation from all of them that they wish their comments to be, their public comments to be made at the August meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no other.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
There are no other public comments at this time. That was the last item for today.
Thank you. With that, members, we're not adjourning this meeting, but rather taking a recess, and we'll reconvene this meeting tomorrow, Thursday, the 23rd at 10 a.m. And it is officially 12:22 right now.
Chair Vasquez, Vice Chair Schaefer here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schaefer, go ahead.
On my page 5 of our 10-page agenda, it doesn't mention 10 a.m. How did that escape the printer?
Not sure. We can ask.
Thank you.
I'm assuming it's 10 a.m. tomorrow.
See, I've been wondering all morning because that has not been printed, and I'd like to request that whenever they state a reconvening or any relevant time date, they also give us the time.
Mr. Schaefer, if you look at page 7, it shows that the meeting is reconvening at 10 a.m.
Okay.
You look at page 7 of your agenda.
All right. Mr. Nanjo, do you agree that it might also have said 10 a.m. on page 5, but it didn't?
It is not necessary to have it on that page because that's.
We lost you, Mr. Nanjo.
7. It says that the meeting reconvenes. The title says Thursday, July 23rd, 2020, 10 a.m. And then if you notice, the first item is 10 a.m. board meeting reconvenes.
Okay. Well, I would just ask that you, even though you don't have to, that when you give a date, you also give a time if it's relevant.
Okay, we will take a look at that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, members, now it is 12:24. So we'll recess this meeting and reconvene tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the informational hearing. Thank you for your patience and have a safe evening, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. Thank you, members.
This is Chair.